In the silence of the orbital greenhouse, Lieutenant Mara Hale sat beside a blooming red fern from Earth. It was one of the last living plants of its kind rescued before Earth became uninhabitable. The leaves shimmered with dew under the artificial sunlight, but it did nothing to warm her heart. She stared at the stars through the wide glass panel. One of those stars, far across the galaxy, was where he had gone. Commander Elias Rourke. They had trained together, fought together, laughed over cold rations and whispered stories in the dark hallways of the ship Vigilant Dawn. He had been her friend, her anchor, maybe even something more. But then the orders came, and he was reassigned. Strategic Peace Front Delta Quadrant, the orders had said. Mara hadn't said much when he left. She had smiled, saluted, and watched him go. That was one standard year ago. He had sent a few messages in the first month, short, polite, distant, then nothing now. All she had was the silence of the stars. She moved through the greenhouse, checking on the plants, but her mind kept drifting. Every small sound, the hiss of recycled air, the beep of the irrigation system, reminded her she was alone. Other crew members passed by sometimes, but no one stopped to talk. Mara had always been quiet, but lately it felt like she was fading into the walls. She wanted to message him. Just a simple "how are you?" But she didn't know what to say after that. What if he had moved on? What if he didn't want to remember Earth or her? She pulled out her datapad, opened his contact. Her finger hovered over the message icon. Then, she put it away again. Later that evening, she went to the observation deck. There was a clear view of the galaxy from their ribbons of stars. Slow-moving freighters and patrol ships blinking in the void. It used to make her feel small in a beautiful way. Now, it just made her feel lost. Another human sat nearby. It was an old mechanic named Jin. He had white hair, a crooked nose, and kind eyes. He was polishing a small metal sculpture of an eaglean. Earth's symbol most aliens didn't understand. He noticed her and smiled. He looked like someone carrying a heavy load. She sat down near him but didn't answer at first. Finally, she asked quietly, "Do you ever miss someone so much? It feels like your chest is empty?" Jin nodded. "My daughter. She moved to the Andari system with her alien partner," said she. "Wanted peace, not ships and uniforms. I haven't seen her in 10 years. "That's a long time," Mara said. "It is," Jin replied. "But hope doesn't keep time. It just waits with you." Those words stayed with her. That night, Mara pulled out her old message logs. She read Elias's last message again. "Things are tense here. I'm doing okay. Hope the greenhouse is still alive. You've always made it bloom better than anyone else." She smiled. He had remembered. Her fingers began to type. "The greenhouse is still alive. So am I. The fern is growing again. Remember that little red one you said looked like fire? It bloomed today." She stopped. Her thumb hovered over send. No, she thought. It's too simple. It's too late. She erased the message, closed the pad, then opened it again. "The red fern bloomed today. You once said it looked like fire. I miss those quiet days. I hope you're safe out there, wherever you are." This time she hit send. The reply didn't come that day, or the next. But she felt something change inside her. She had spoken. Yes. She had reached across the stars. Ow! That was something humans always did, Rich, even when it hurt. Even when they didn't know if someone would reach back. In the coming days, Mara watered the plants with a lighter step. She even helped one of the rookies fix a broken panel in the hydroponics lab. People started talking to her again. Slowly, gently. The silence around her began to shift. She didn't know if Elias would write back, but she had hope, and that more than firepower. More than shields, more than any alien technology, was what made humans impossible to defeat. Asterisk Mara woke up earlier than usual. The greenhouse lights were still dim, simulating Earth's dawn. The red fern glowed faintly in the corner, petals closed for the artificial night. The air was calm, but inside her chest, something stirred. She had dreamed of Elias. He wasn't doing anything big, just sitting beside her on a bench made of ship steel, eating ration crackers and laughing at her terrible jokes. That old familiar warmth had returned, even if just in sleep. But when she woke up, the cold reality came back. He was still far away. She rubbed her eyes and got up. Another day of plant reports, soil scans, and lonely silence. Another day wondering if her message had reached him more, if it had disappeared into the void then. Just before she stepped out of her quarters, her datapad buzzed. New message, Commander. Rourke, time delay. 5.2 days. Her heart froze. She tapped the screen. The message opened slowly, buffering through the long-range transmission. Mara, I didn't expect to hear from you. The red fern. Of course I remember. Said it looked like fire, but I think it always looked like you. Sorry I stopped writing. Things got complicated out here. I hope you're still watering the world. I've missed you. Mara stared at the screen for a long time. Her fingers trembled, not with sadness, but something warmer. His words weren't long, but they were real honest. It was like hearing his voice again after a long winter. She whispered to herself, "You didn't forget me." Later that day, she found herself staring out at the stars again. Jin was there, sitting in his usual spot with a mug of tea. He gave her a curious glance. "You look different," he said. Like someone just found a piece of their soul again. She sat beside him and nodded. He wrote back. Jin didn't ask who. He just smiled. "I'm glad," he said. Sometimes it just takes one message to melt the distance. Mara looked out the window. Ships moved like silver fish across the darkness. She remembered when she once thought space was too big for anything to survive, especially feelings, but humans had always been different. They crossed deserts, oceans, planets. They didn't always win, but they always tried. Even when the odds were against them, they left signs, messages, seeds of hope, like that red fern, blooming even in space. That night, Mara took a walk to the old storage deck. Few came down here anymore. The lights flickered and dust hung in. The air like faded memory. She found a crate with old Terran items, books, tools, handwritten journals. She opened one and found a message scrawled inside. "If we are forgotten, let our words remember. If we are broken, let our dreams rebuild." This is what it means to be human. Tears welled in her eyes. How many others had felt this way? Lost, distant, waiting for someone who had moved on, or just moved far. She picked up the journal and carried it back with her. The next few days passed slowly. She sent another message. Then another. "The vines are curling over the edge of the shelf. I think they're trying to escape. Did you ever fix your guitar? I still remember how bad you were at it. I'm glad you wrote back. I don't feel so invisible anymore." No replies came right away, but she didn't stop writing, and she didn't stop hoping that. Two was a very human thing to keep building bridges, even when no one stood on the other side. Then, on the 7th day, another message arrived. "I haven't played guitar since I left the Vigilant Dawn, but I still remember the song you sang in the engine room. I think about you more than I should. Sometimes I look up at the stars and wonder if you're looking at the same ones. Maybe. One day we'll stop wondering and just be in the same place again." Mara placed her hand over her heart. In the middle of an endless galaxy, full of weapons, technology, and cold logic, this was what made humanity different. They didn't just conquer planets. They conquered silence with kindness, with memory, with a simple, "I miss you." That evening, she placed the red fern's pot near the observation window where it could catch the light of a distant sun. She sat beside it, humming the old song Elias used to strum on his broken guitar. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but tonight she wasn't alone. The stars looked quieter tonight. Mara sat in the greenhouse, tracing her fingers along the glass as she watched a passing comet leave a trail of light. The red fern beside her had grown taller, its petals now opened wider, as if listening with her, but Elias hadn't replied in 6 days. 6 long days. After 2 warm, hopeful messages, silence had returned. Mara tried to stay calm, but her chest ached with worry.
Now what if he was hurt?
What if his last message was goodbye, and he just didn't say it? She stared at the last words on her datapad. Maybe one day we'll stop wondering and just be in the same place again, she whispered into the dark. I wish today was that day. Mara walked to the command deck, hoping for news. The communications officer, Lieutenant Bryn, looked up from his console. You expecting a transmission? From Delta Quadrant again? He asked, smiling kindly. Mara nodded. Just routine, keeping in touch. Bryn frowned slightly. You haven't heard? Heard what? There was a battle. A rogue alien faction hit one of our Peacefront stations. No names released yet. Mara's stomach dropped. Her mouth went dry. When, 3 days ago, Bryn said. The area's gone dark. They're trying to re-establish long-range comms. She walked away without speaking. Back in the greenhouse, Mara stood silently beside the oxygen vines. The air was humid, alive, but her mind was racing. Elias could be gone. Hurt, captured, or worse. She had waited too long to say the things that really mattered, and now she didn't know if she'd get another chance. She pulled up an old message log and began recording. Even though there was no one to send it to, Elias, I don't know if this will reach you. I just wanted to say you mattered to me more than I ever told you, more than just an old friend on a ship. I miss the way you made the cold halls feel warmer. I miss hearing you hum when you thought no one was listening. You gave me something I never thanked you for, hope. If you're out there, please come back. I'll wait. She saved the message and let it sit in her outbox. Then, for the first time in many months, she cried. 2 days passed. Mara did her duties, checked the soil, monitored water levels, gave clipped answers during team meetings, but inside, a storm grew. She remembered something her Earth's history teacher once said. Humans don't give up. Even when they're grieving, they find a way to build from the pain. Maybe she couldn't save Elias, but maybe she could do something. On the 3rd day, she went to the command center and stood before Captain Idris. I'd like permission. To volunteer, she said. The captain looked surprised. Volunteer for what? To join the next diplomatic support vessel to Delta Quadrant. I have agricultural and life support training. I can help rebuild the station. I just need to go. He studied her face for a long moment. You're not the only one with someone over there, he finally said. I'll approve it. The ardent wind departs in 3 days. That night, Mara stood by the window again, watching the stars shift. She didn't know what she would find out there, but she was done waiting for messages. She would cross the silence herself, because that's what humans did. They crossed oceans. Deserts and stars, not just for war, not just for survival, but for love, friendship, and hope. The next morning, as she prepared her things, her datapad beeped. She froze. New message. Encrypted transmission Delta Peacefront sender. Commander E. Rourke. Delay. 7.9 days. She opened it, hands shaking. Mara, I'm alive. Barely. The station was hit hard. I lost a lot of people. I was buried under wreckage for 3 days before rescue teams found me. Your message saved me. No joke. Kept hearing your voice in my head. That song. That laugh. I held on because I thought maybe you were still out there. And if you were. Maybe I still had something to return to. I'm being transferred to medical orbit for recovery. But I want you to know, I miss you too, more than I ever let myself admit. Mara clutched the pad to her chest. For the first time in weeks, she smiled through tears. She whispered, You're coming back? Asterisk, the ardent wind cruised silently through deep space. Its engines hummed softly, and the metal walls glowed with low lights meant to mimic starlight. To most of the crew, it was just another diplomatic ship sent to support damaged stations and offer aid. But to Mara Hale was a lifeline. She stood in her small cabin, watching stars slip past through the narrow window. Each one felt like a memory. Some warm, some sharp, and some still unfinished. Elias, she kept his last message saved, opening it each night before sleep. Reading it made her feel closer to him, but it also reminded her how far they still were. He was in recovery now, orbiting a small medical station above a planet called Sartu that was still 12 days away. She had left her plants behind in the care of Jin. The red fern was still blooming. When she left, he handed her a tiny branch. Carefully clipped and sealed in a glass tube. "Carry a piece of hope with you," he had said now. The little tube sat near her bed, a soft red glow shining like a tiny fire in the dark. But even as the ship moved closer to Elias, Mara didn't feel peace. Instead, the silence returned. She thought she would feel better, knowing he was alive. But she didn't know what to say when she saw him again. What if things had changed? What if he saw her and only felt guilt or duty? She had sent her heart out into the stars. What if it had landed in the wrong place? One evening, she sat alone in the small observation lounge. Another crew member, a quiet alien named Resh, floated beside her. His species didn't speak often, but they felt emotion deeply. He watched her in silence before speaking with a slow, thoughtful voice. "You are traveling far, but your thoughts remain farther." Mara smiled sadly. "There's someone I care about. I'm going to see him again. I don't know if he still feels the same." Raish tilted his head. Feelings that cross galaxies are rare. If yours reached him, he has already been changed. His words settled in her heart like soft snow. She nodded. "Thank you." Each day passed slowly. Mara tried to keep busy, helping with medical inventory, checking the ship's food crops, and writing journal entries she never sent. And then, on the 9th day, a small envelope appeared on her bunk paper. Real paper. Inside was a note. "You helped save my life. I'd like to return the favor. I've arranged clearance for you to enter Medical Orbit 7 once we arrive. I'll be waiting." Elias her hands trembled as she read it again and again. He wanted to see her. He remembered the final 3 days were a blur. The ardent wind docked above the Sartu with a quiet hiss. Mara stepped into the long docking corridor, heart pounding, knees shaky. The station was small, but clean. Staff moved quickly, quietly. She was directed to room 17B. Her fingers hovered over the door's panel. Then, with a deep breath, she tapped. It opened. Elias sat near the window, wrapped in a light blanket. His face was thinner, one arm still in a soft cast. But when he turned and saw her, his smile was the same. "Mara." She stood frozen for a moment, then slowly stepped inside. "Hey," she whispered. For a few seconds, they just looked at each other. No words. Just quiet understanding. Then he reached out. She crossed the room and took his hand. It felt warm, real, and the distance between them light years. Silence, fear finally faded. "I thought I lost you," she said softly. "I thought I'd never see you again," he replied. They sat for a long time, speaking about everything and nothing about the station attack. About the red fern, about old songs and missed breakfasts. No big confessions, no dramatic speeches, just two people. Reconnecting, and that, somehow, was even more powerful that night. Before returning to her bunk, Mara stepped out into the docking corridor and looked out at the stars. For so long, they'd felt like a wall. Now they felt like a road. Humans didn't always know how to fix what was broken, but they always tried. They reached. Even when their hands shook, they waited. Even when the answer might never come, they believed in each other. In messages, in memories, and that belief had brought her. Here, she whispered into the stars, "This is what we do. We find each other, no matter how far." The quiet hum of the medical station was comforting. But Mara still couldn't sleep. She lay on the cot in her assigned crew quarters, staring up at the soft lights on the ceiling. Outside the small window, the blue curve of Deza 2 hung peacefully. In the darkness, somewhere, just a few halls away, Elias was resting in room 17B. They had seen each other every day for the past week. They talked. They shared meals. She even brought him a real flower from the greenhouse laba, small yellow bloom from a Terran sunflower clone. He smiled when she gave it to him, said it reminded him of Earth. But still, something felt missing. There was a gap between them, silence they couldn't name. Mara wanted to ask him, "What are we now?" But the words always stuck in her throat, and Elias never brought it up either. It was strange. She had come all this way, crossed half the galaxy, fought through fear, and now she didn't know what to say. She sat up and whispered to herself, "Why is it so hard to speak when someone means everything to you?" The next day, she walked with Elias through the garden dome on the station. His limp was still healing, and he leaned slightly on a metal cane, but he insisted on walking. The garden was small, but it had rows of fresh vegetables, leafy greens, and a few colorful flowers. Most had been grown from Earth's seeds. "I miss this," Elias said softly. "The smell of living things, the way dirt feels under your hands." Mara smiled. "You used to say that gardening was for people who didn't want excitement." He laughed, then winced. "Yeah, I was an idiot." Letting the silence settle between them, not uncomfortable, just full. Finally, Mara stopped near a bed of strawberries and turned to him. "I keep thinking about everything we didn't say before you left." Elias looked down. "Me too." Mara's voice shook. "I was afraid you'd forget me. That maybe I didn't matter as much as you did to me." He looked at her, his expression soft. "I thought the same. I didn't write because I didn't want to hope for something that wasn't real." "But it was real," Mara whispered. "Yes," he said. "It still is." They stood in silence, the strawberries ripening beside them. Then Elias took her hand. That evening, Mara wrote in her journal again, not to Elias, but to herself. "We spend so much time afraid to speak, afraid to be too much. But hope doesn't grow in silence. It grows in reaching out, trying, even when your voice shakes. That's what we are. We're not the strongest species, not the fastest, but we feel and we try. We keep trying. That's what makes us human." She saved the entry and stared at the stars outside. The galaxy was still vast, full of danger, change, and loneliness. But tonight, she didn't feel lost. She felt alive. The next morning, she visited Elias again. This time, she brought something new, a small glass box. Inside it was the branch of the red fern Jin had given her before she left. She placed it on the table beside his bed. "It bloomed while you were gone," she said. "Now it's here, with you." Elias reached out and touched the glass. "It's beautiful, just like the greenhouse, just like you." Mara blushed. "I want you to have it. A reminder that even when things feel far apart, they can still find their way back." He looked at her with gentle eyes. Are we finding our way back?" "I hope so," she said softly. "I do too," he whispered. Later that week, Elias was cleared for transport to a new research post in the Outer Ring. It was peaceful work, no battles, no border conflicts, just soil study, terraforming, and rebuilding lost Earth species. "I've been offered a spot on the same team," Mara told him as they stood at the viewing deck. Elias blinked. "You have?" She smiled. "I accepted. I figured, if we're still finding our way back, we might as well walk the path together." His voice was quiet. "You always did grow things better than anyone." They stood side by side, watching the stars. It's not as something far and cold, but as a road they had both chosen. The past still hurt. The silence still echoed. But now the distance wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of something new, because humans, more than any other species, knew how to reach across space, time, and fear, to say, "I'm still here, and I'm not giving up." Mara stood at the edge of the terraforming site on the planet Kalira 3. Watching dry wind blow over the cracked ground, the sun above was a soft orange, casting long shadows across the gray soil. Dust clung to her boots, and her gloves were already stained from hours of digging and testing. She had only been here for 2 weeks. But the loneliness felt stronger than ever. Elias had arrived with her. They worked on the same team, but on different shifts. He was assigned to night crops and moisture reclamation. She was placed on daytime soil rehab and seed planting. They barely saw each other, and when they did, the words didn't come easily. At first, she thought it was just tiredness, a new planet, new work, new stress. But deep inside, she wondered, were they drifting apart again? She sat on a rock, pulled off her gloves, and stared at the horizon. They had come so far, survived distance, silence, war. But now that they were finally in the same place, they didn't feel close. That night, she sat alone in the small bass mess hall. Most of the crew was sleeping or working night shifts. The lights were dim. Air hummed with the sound of generators. And fans? She pulled out her datapad and opened her message log. No new messages. Elias hadn't written since they arrived. She thought about sending him something simple. Hey, you okay? But she deleted it. Instead, she opened an old voice recording of the red fern blooming. The quiet sound of petals opening, soft wind through leaves, it brought back the peace of the greenhouse. The memory of him smiling, and her chest ached. Why? Does love feel far away even when the person is right next to you? She wondered that the next morning, Mara worked with a silent mind. She planted rootstocks in the dry trench, adjusted the moisture levels, and ran pH checks. Her hands moved, but her heart wasn't in it. Suddenly, her communicator crackled. Unit 4, report to Sector West for assistance. Irrigation failure. She grabbed her toolkit and walked across the ridge to Sector West. When she arrived, she froze. Elias was already there, standing ankle-deep in muddy water, holding a broken pipe. He looked up. You're the help they sent? She gave a small, tired smile.
Guess so.
They worked together in silence, fixing the joint and clearing out the filters. Felt like old times, smooth, focused, quiet. But the silence between them was heavier than ever. When they finished, he sat on a crate and took off his gloves. I've been meaning to talk to you, said finally. Mara sat across from him, heart thudding. I don't know what's happening, he said. We were so close. And now, I feel like I can't find the right words. She nodded. Me too, I think. I thought everything would fall into place once we were together again. But now it feels like we're trying too hard not to break. He looked down. Maybe I'm scared that I'll mess it up. Mara reached over and touched his hand. Me too. But maybe that's what makes us human. We don't always get it right, but we keep trying. He smiled slowly. You always say things better than I do, she smiled back. Not always, but I try. Later that evening, they sat outside the base dome together. It wasn't allowed. For long, just a few minutes, in protective gear. But it was quiet, peaceful. They watched the twin moons of Calarethri rise in the sky. Casting silver light across the ground, Mara turned to Elias. We've changed, haven't we? He nodded. Yeah, but maybe that's not a bad thing. We're still the same inside, she said. We still care. He looked at her eyes gentle. Then let's keep trying, even if it's hard, even if it's slow. Mara leaned her head against his shoulder, and for the first time in days, the silence between them didn't feel like distance. It felt like understanding. The next morning, Mara left something on Elias's workbench. A small note, handwritten, folded neatly. We don't need perfect words, just honest ones. I'm here. I still care. I'm not giving up. Beside the note, she placed the glass tube with the red fern branch. Its petals had started to curl. But the color still burned bright, a reminder that even far from Earth, in dry soil and foreign stars, hope could still grow. The dust storm had lasted for 3 days. Inside the base, the alarms had stopped, replaced by a heavy silence that pressed on Mara's chest like the thickest swirling clouds outside. Power flickered. The crew tightened their routines, checking systems and repairing shields.
Ow.
But the storm had damaged communication arrays. No messages could get through. Mara sat near the base's small window, watching the orange haze drift past. Outside, the world was wild and uncertain. Inside, she felt the same. Her thoughts drifted to Elias. When the storm began, he had been assigned to emergency repairs in the power grid. They had said he'd be back by morning. But morning had come and gone. She wanted to call him, to send a message. But the arrays were down. For hours, she sat waiting. Finally, the main doors hissed open, and Elias stumbled inside. His face was streaked with dirt, his clothes torn. Mara ran to him. Are you okay? She asked, voice trembling. He smiled weakly. I'm fine. Just a little shaken. She pulled him inside, helped him remove his gear, and sat beside him. I was afraid, she admitted. Elias took her hand. Me too. They sat in silence. The storm raging outside, but inside the base, something stronger was growing. The next days were hard. The storm had damaged more than just communications. Water filtration slowed, food stocks dwindled, tempers flared. But Mara and Elias worked together, sharing tasks, encouraging others, rebuilding what they could. One evening after a long day, Mara found Elias sitting alone by the oxygen tanks. She sat beside him, offering a tired smile. He looked up. I was thinking, we've built a lot here, but we haven't built us. Mara nodded slowly. I've been scared to try. He squeezed her hand. Me too, but we're stronger than that. We are, she said, voice steady. That night, with the storm past and stars returning, Mara and Elias walked outside the base. The ground was soft and wet from recent rain. The air smelled of earth and fresh beginnings. They stood under the vast sky, quiet for a moment. Then Mara spoke. I don't want to lose you again. Not to distance, not to silence, not to fear. Elias looked at her eyes bright. Neither do I. She reached out and took his face gently. We can't change the past, but we can build a future. He smiled, leaning into her touch. Weeks passed. The red fern, once fragile, grew strong and tall in its glass case. Mara and Elias's bond deepened, no longer held back by distance or silence. Together, they led the team to repair the damaged systems, strengthen the settlement, prepare for the next phase of terraforming. Their story began to spread among the crew, a tale of hope, patience, and the human will to connect. One morning, as the first seeds sprouted in the greenhouse, Mara looked at Elias and said, We are more than just survivors. He smiled. We're proof. Proof that even when worlds fall apart, even when silence threatens to break us, humans reach out. We hold on, we rebuild, and we never stop hoping. The morning light filled the greenhouse like a gentle promise. Mara stood beside the red fern, now tall and strong, its petals glowing like a soft flame. Outside, the terraforming site was alive with new growth, young shoots breaking through the once barren soil. Elias was nearby, carefully adjusting nutrient levels in a hydroponic tray. His cast was gone, and his steps were steady. They had come so far, but today, Mara felt a quiet question in her heart. Would this moment last? Would the distance come again? The silence? The fear? Later that day, a message arrived from Earth Command. The galaxy was stirring with new threats. Borders shifting, unknown fleets moving in shadows. The fragile peace that humanity fought for was under threat. The Ardent Wind's mission had changed. They would soon leave Kalir 3 to join a larger coalition, one that needed every hand. Every heart. Mara looked at Elias. We might be separated again, she said softly. He nodded. But this time, we know how to hold on. They spent the evening talking not just about the work ahead, but about their future, about hope. Elias reached for the glass tube holding the red fern branch. Take this with you, he said. Mara smiled. A piece of home, he nodded. Reminder that even across the stars, we carry each other. As the day of departure came, the crew gathered on the launch platform. Mara and Elias stood side by side, hands entwined. Their journey had been long, not just through space, but through doubt and distance. But now, they were stronger. Captain Idris approached. Humans, he said quietly. You teach us something. No technology can have to hope. Mara squeezed Elias's hand. We don't just survive, she said. We reach. We connect. We believe. The ship rose, engines roaring to life, as the stars blurred past the window. Ra looked at Elias and whispered, No matter how far we go, no matter what comes, I'll find you again. He smiled, and I'll be waiting. The galaxy stretched. Out before them, vast, unknown, and full of promise. But between two humans, a light burned steady, a light of hope, a light no distance could dim.